There have been recent movements surrounding Mienshao and calls for it to potentially be the Pokemon that next gets the boot from Inu. Not Flygon, not Pom Pom, Mienshao. And today I'm going to talk about why that is. I'm going to go over as well, you know, a generic, here's some sets, and here's some counterplay. We're going to have a grand old time, and I'll give you my take maybe at the end. Still not sure how I feel about it, but of course, if you enjoy our wonderful daily uploads, even when I'm recording at 9 p.m. after work, just because I didn't have any other time to record really today. Subscribe, please. I'm doing this for y'all. I'm not doing it for me. And of course, you know what? It helps the channel out quite a bit when you subscribe. Leave a like, comment, do all that wonderful stuff. Anyhow, your standard Mienshao sets, y'all already know a lot about this stuff, so I don't really feel the need to talk too much about Xiao. But what is the driving factor behind Mienshao leaving? Or not leaving, but getting calls for a ban. Yeah, this Mon leaving, Talonflame leaving. That's naturally a big reason why there's been renewed consideration for Mienshao as not only one of the like 2 or 3 best Pokemon in the tier, but potentially too much for the tier. Talonflame was not necessarily some god tier Mienshao counter or anything, because, I mean, you just died to Stone Edge. And Mienshao even ran protective pads as an item pretty frequently too, to try and deny Talonflame the type of happiness and joy in life that it would find otherwise, switching into you repeatedly and threatening flame body burns. But regardless, was one of the best CC deterrents in the tier, and I would argue Talonflame almost single-handedly made Mienshao kind of not amazing. It was always a good mon in the tier, but I think we had a point where Talon was just so good, and Mienshao sort of started falling off. People started experimenting with more speed control options that were not just Scarf Shell, and it really put a damper on Mienshao's overall usefulness and viability. Now we have Cress and Talon gone. I mean, Cress ban isn't like a huge thing, frankly, for Xiao, but it is another, I guess you could say feather in its cap, so to speak, and a reason why you got a lot of people calling for bans. We'll talk about more why too, because I would argue Life Orb Xiao is the big reason, but of course Scarf Xiao is still really good in the tier 2. When you have a Mon that learns U-turn and has Regenerator, this is what Megan said in the P30. He's like, the Mon has Regen, Knockoff, U-turn. This is a very established OP combo throughout the generations. OP, of course, just meaning Mon good, right? And that really plays into NU particularly right now when you consider how our hazard control, even pre Talonflame leaving, by the way, this is not just because we lost Talon. People didn't really love Defog Talon back then either, but a big reason that Regen is so important right now is because it's hard to keep hazards off, and Spike Stack is really good. So when you have a Mon that can fit onto these like boot spam teams but not necessarily have to run boots, because this technically applies to either set, like, yeah, Life Orb Chip kind of means you're not getting the most out of Regen, but still okay. You end up having a lot more room for error compared to maybe a breaker like Specs and Teleon, where if hazards go up, you're just taking chip repeatedly. Xiao doesn't have to deal with that. So Mienshao fits really nicely on the teams, but when you consider a lot of the current counterplay to our fighting types, a lot of it doesn't really beat Life Orb Xiao that well. Even Scarf Xiao has like a natural advantage over most of the Mons that are going to try to check it, because you have U-turn and you have knockoff. So if you're some random bulky fight resist that has a Rocky helmet, well, I can knock that and then I can U-turn forever and there's nothing you can do to stop me. You really already can't stop me with your helmet, but I'm gonna make sure you can't. Right? Because, like, I have Regen anyway. It's just kind of a matter of ensuring that there is literally zero that you have in response. I will maintain momentum the entire game, and at worst, I will be turned into a U-turn bot, which, for what it's worth, this is very valid counterplay, and I do not want to, like, minimize that. If you turn them on into a U-turn bot, and this is what I actually argued as part of why I didn't think Pass was OP at the beginning, Passimian was OP at the beginning of the gen, it was too frequently turned to a U-turn bot, then that does constant counterplay. But, like, at worst, you do that and you enable the myriad of OP, strong, good, whatever adjective you want to use there. Wall breaks of the tier, things like Toxtricity and Porygon Z, for example. At best, your opponent makes, like, one misplay, you close combat the ever-loving shit out of something on their team, and it's gonzo. So I'm not gonna really talk about Scarf too much. I do just kind of want to talk about how, like, Terra type wise, you don't have to do fighting. It's just CC boosting. That's really good. But like, Dark can be good depending on the team. Shouts Glitchic City. Y'all already know. Dark can be good though if you need it. Steel, of course, is generally just useful defensively. Poison, if you do Poison Jab instead of Ice Spinner, is good too, because then you have coverage for the fairies, and those are one of your better answers. Terra Ice is like kind of cope, but if I'm remembering my head calcs right, Terra Ice Spinner just 2 shots Plume. It means you have a terrible defensive typing, that's why you don't really ever see it. You'd rather just U-turn into your Plume check, but it's still valid. You'll just normally see something like Fight or Dark even instead. So, Life Orb Shao. Why is this mod so good? Well, Terra Dark knockoff. So you can see here, right? My list of counterplay is quite extensive here, and we'll talk about how all of these different mods count as counterplay. These are not counters, they're checks and counters. And as some people say, like, oh, nothing counters Mienshao because it is Regenerator and U-turn. Shut the fuck up. It's utter woke nonsense and I won't stand for it. You know. But I do think there are going to be people that say something like that, and it's just wrong. I mean, that's not how Pokemon works. You are countered if you are forced to U-turn and do nothing else. Like, you can have counterplay to your counter still, sure. Counter doesn't have to mean that you literally can never do anything of note ever. It just means that some Pokemon are going to be harder for you to overwhelm than others. So, like, things like Slowbro, for example. This is actually a mod where I would say you could argue against even calling it a counter, but it's at the bet. It's like a hard check, you'd say, where you hard checks right between a check, and you know it's like a really solid check, but could still be beat down. So, like, for example, Slowbro though, Terra Dark Knock from Life Orb Shao. It 2 shots if Bro is not Cobra Berry and if Slowbro can't Terra. So that's not good. So like Vileplume, right? You see I have Fake Out on here, just because Fake Out's like fine on Life Orb Shao. But if Shao's like Triple Axle, or even just Ice Spinner, we'll take away the whole multi-hit thing. It could beat Plume, sure. Something like a Fairy type, like Sylveon. It could be Poison Jab, and you could have that to help with Plume. Or you could also just, or not Plume, Sylveon. But also you could just, knock it, get rid of the boots, and then just keep momentum on it the whole game with U-turn. That also is going to constitute counterplay. But it's like ideas like this are why Life Orb Shao was so dangerous. Your counters and checks to it are never really truly safe. All of them do have varying things to worry about, and there's not really anything intuitive that you could take from a Shao preview to say, oh yeah, no, I know for sure what that Life Orb Mienshao has running on it. And it's not even like you can guarantee Life Orb Shao. There must be some builds where it looks more likely that it's a Life Orb Shao than a Scarf Shao, or vice versa, but you can also obscure the set quite nicely, because you have a lot of other Pokemon in the tier where you have just either natural speed, like say Kilowattrel for example, or that have sets that can go Wall Breaker or Scarf just like Mienshao, such as say Flygon, for example. So it can be really hard to pin down the Weasel in many facets, whether it's just pin it down and kill it because it's got regen U-turn, or just figure out your game plan around it because it's going to be hard sometimes to know what set it's got. And it just like Scarf Shao, you're going to have a lot of the same with movesets and Terra types on here, where like this last slot has a couple moves. It could be like Jab, Ice Spinner, Triple Axle, Fake Out. They're all pretty decent in Terra types. You got like Dark, Steel, Fighting, even if you just want the stupid strong CC. Poison, particularly with Poison Jab, I find is valuable. I've even considered Electric at points because it helps out a little bit with Kilowattrel, and even Oricorio Pom Pom to some extent. I think you could argue that Terra Steel is maybe better than a Pom Pom. Maybe not better, but is just as good in a Pom Pom. Well, maybe a little bit better into your overall counterplay, like Psychics and Fairies, but I think Electric's at least a cool consideration because of it helping in the Kilo matchup by walling the dual stab. And then if you're facing just the mono air slash Oricorio set, which from what I've seen is still the most common set, although you are seeing people rumble about more Revelation Dance sets again. Obviously those aren't going to be something you can check with Terra all too easily, or at all, but such is life against the bird. And then I mentioned protective pads earlier and how it kind of stopped getting used with the rise of Talonflame to RU. But you can definitely still do pads, especially with Axel. It's just a matter of giving you better outs versus Bloom. And you don't have to worry about helmets either. You still want to knock them for your team, but you don't have to worry about them when you pivot, which is cool. So why do I have this incredibly extensive counterplay? Well, I like talking about counterplay in different forms. I think people get really hung up on trying to counter Pokemon, which, I mean, to be fair, counter's in the word counterplay, so it's a little bit deceptive, I would argue. But I do want to show people that when you have a mon as incredible as Mienshao, it's not like you can't check it. When people are so adamant about banning Pokemon, it's not like you can't find counterplay to it. You just have to know how to contextualize your counterplay, so when you have it on your team and you're game planning for other Pokemon, you know how you have to think about your counterplay, like what lens you're looking at through, right? So for example, things like Scream Tail, right? Scream Tail's a really good answer to Mienshao. You're not weak to knockoff. Really, the only Mienshao variant you truly fear is Poison Jab, which is probably the least common of them. Mienshao is frankly preferring ice coverage more than anything, or fake out for just a little extra priority. That's not to say you don't still care about Jab, but the convenient thing is something like Scream Tail can earn Tera Poison super easily anyway. And then I'm still just as good as a Shellchuck as I was previously, except now I resist U-turn, I resist random Poison Jab. I still resist CC enough. It's not like losing the quad resist and changing it to just a regular resist is all that important. You're still chilling, but it works out pretty nicely. And Scream Tail too has the benefit of actually checking like every fighting type in NU pretty decently, just because of how insane its bulk is. You do have to be careful with it because it's kind of passive, so it can run into issues in like game by game how useful it is. But you know, find like your arbitrary speed. Maybe you're feeling like outspeeding a Chandelure today, and then you go like bang bang. Bold probably, because I think you're gonna run Psychic Noise on it. It's like a mono attack. So yeah, you get like the Noiser, and like Wish, Protect, Roar is pretty frequent from what I've seen on it. And then item, you could do a helmet, but probably just do boots. Glowbro. Glowbro is actually an example where I'd probably go Colbur at this point, because I think... So the thing with Shao is if it Tera Darks on the switch to Glowbro and your item is not Colbur, it actually could just two-shot you with Tera Dark Knock from Life Orb Shao. So I believe Colbur's a little bit better on it right now, just so you avoid that and you can force... Maybe the Shao gets a little too greedy, or you can force it to Tera later on trying to predict you. But this is going to give you a lot of good insurance into it, and then you can just Tera type. Poison's actually okay if you want to go like, say, Calm Mind or Nasty Plot. You can go like that and then have Sludge Bomb, Psyshock, or maybe Flamethrower if you prefer to have actual coverage or Surf, and Slack Off as your last. You can also just do the generic utility sets. Those, I would argue, you're better off with Fairy. And then, yeah, you do see the weakness to Poison Jab, but hey, it is what it is. Can't always be perfect. Yuxi is a little bit different than these others because I don't really have Yuxi on here for defensive sets. I don't think defensive Yuxi is very good, but instead, if you're a setup Yuxi, something like Nasty Plot, then when Mienshao locks into CCs, you just get free setup. Now also, Yuxi loves Tera Fairy because, well, you're running Draining Kiss. And as I've gone over a million times before on this channel, Draining Kiss without being a Fairy type might just be the biggest bait of all time. And I mean that literally. I genuinely believe that it is a bait to run this move without Stab. It just does not do damage. It's not real. But something like this, like we were saying, could 1000% take advantage of a lot of Shaos. And then if they're Life Orb, well, at the very least you have Tera Fairy. You could Psychic Noise them. And if they haven't Tera Darked or something, or if they're a different Tera, then they're not going to get regen on the way out, which is also kind of funny. So if they try to hit you with the Canuck, then you got the Counterplay. Gardekuno, kind of same idea, where just if you're Tera Fairy on it, potentially you get to take advantage of Shao's being greedy with their locks. Or even if they're a Life Orb, you just get to, again, take advantage of them by Terraing, and it's smacking the taste out their mouth with a Psychic Noise, Hurricane, Air Slash, a Freezing Glare, even. Maybe you're not even set up and you're just a different set, but you still have the Tera Fairy. Hey, You could hit him like that. Monkey Dory. Nice thing about Dory is you could be Choice Scarf or just straight up outspeed any Mienshao variant. Or you could be Boots, still outspeed the more, I don't want to say Life Orb's more common, but increasingly common Mienshao set, and still smack the taste out of its mouth. You'd have to be careful of things like Tera Dark and Tera Steel, but Monkey Dory can at least go for Tera Poison and get a much stronger Sludge Wave if they're Tera Dark, which is a lot more common than Steel. You also at least have outs versus Shao. Like, I can U-turn and scout the Shao. So, you talk about like Mienshao always has the benefit of Regenerator U-turn and how that makes Counterplay to it just so difficult to say you're like really happy with on your team. Because Mienshao doesn't have to stay in, it can just dip and figure out what it wants to do later. That's kind of the nice thing here. Monkey Dory can do the same thing. See if Mienshao wants to go for a Tera and then figure out gameplay from there. Gligar will wall any non-ice moveset. It's just, there's nothing it can do to you, and you get free hazards. That's a very good thing to Gligar. Also, if you are running Acrobatics, that's actually really good because you one-shot Mienshao when you lose your item. Why would you run Acro on this one, you may ask? Because Gligar has the attack stat of a Cucumber? Well, this mon is always a knockoff switching. And if I'm switching into Mienshao, well, probably plan on losing my items. So then you got the Acro, you just bop bop, and it's gone. Pom Pom, same idea as a lot of the other setup sweepers. It's just a matter of Scarf Shell you can exploit really, really hard. And this is super important too with Pom Pom because this spawn is incredibly dangerous. So when you have that type of threat level that you put into the soul, you put the fear of God into Mienshao's, makes it a lot harder for them to want to CC stuff, and you can turn them into that type of U-turn bot we were talking about. If they are Tera fighting, it's a little scarier, because that actually just does a million to you. Unless you're like one of the bulky setup pom-poms. They're not ever this bulky, but they can be quite bulky. I would argue the bulkiest I would ever imagine would be like, honestly, I was gonna say this because you outspeed Adamant Decidueye pre-setup, but I feel like I have seen Pom Pom go even bulkier. I just don't think there's anything that's 65 base speed neutral nature nowadays. Out of the top of my head. But if you're this bulkier of a Pom Pom, it's at least a little bit better of an outlook for you, but still a little bleak. So like Kilo, you're just faster than Life Orb Shao, and that's huge. You have Hurricane or Air Slash to threaten it. Scarf Shao at the very least. You know, you can come in on CC after it's picked off something on your team. Nice thing too about Kilo though is Tera Ghost is a reasonable Tera type. Fairy's like probably the second most common Tera, or most common Tera. I'd say Fairy, Steel, and Ghost are all like common. Fairy and Steel are very common. Ghost is still good. Steel may actually be the most common right now, so you have to be running something, I guess, that's off meta, in quotes. But like I said, Fairy is really good and still really common, and I think Ghost is fine too. So you have the option to retain your resistance to fighting when you Tera, or just to straight up have an immunity then, and you just doink it. Defensive Dragalge, which is a set that I like. I frequently run, you know, like little Vileplume speed, and then you go like this. This mon, I believe, is a little underrated at this point, but I'll admit it's hard to build with Dragalge right now and feel like it's the right slot on your team. But a set that I've done in at least the recent enough past to remember that I ran the set was something like this. And this set's pretty cool because you have a lot of disruption power across the clerics, or the wish passers. Because think about it, Sylveon you have Sludge Bomb for, Screamtail, you have Sludge, like you're just outright beating these mons down with an inch of their life. And it's not like Vapo, well, you threaten the poison on, so that's already kind of scary. But otherwise, you can kind of just sit in front of it for a little bit, maybe force them to Tera, and then if they're gonna wish, you just Dragon Tail them out. You can make it so they never get the safe pass, and it's really nice. Plume, one of the better answers, of course, to Shao. You have to fear the ice move. But even then, I mean, one, I could be Tera Fairy. And if you're Tera Fairy Plume, you're like probably one of the best Mienshao answers possible. Because you either never have to Tera, and you just beat Shao pretty perpetually. While threatening effects for too, mind you. Or you do Tera, and then, well, you're just still finding the Shao. Plume has other issues right now. And I'd say the bigger issue with Plume as a Shao check is when it U-turns on you, think back to the teammates we talked about it bringing in. Things like Toxtricity and PZ, those just beat you down very, very reliably. But at least in the context of dealing with Shao itself, being able to threaten Effect Spore so constantly and so effectively on it is actually, like, very massive. And it's why I still rate this mon at least decently highly right now. So yeah. Croak. This is like, Croak and Toxtricity both are examples of soft checks. They are not mons you want to send into Mienshao. Like, even Scarf Shao CC does 1,000,000, and an issue with Croak and Toxt is, yeah, they are just gonna get overwhelmed too quickly. It's sort of like using Toxicroak as an answer as a check to Water Tauros. It is, yes, it is a check. It's just not a very amazing check because Water Tauros is so strong. Trying to switch it to its close combat, your best case scenario is that it's not choice banned and it still does like 40. And you better hope your leftovers Croak. Your life orb, yeah, congrats. That's your one switching. Good job, buddy. But Croak's like an example. You 1v1 Mienshao. Same with Toxtricity. You 1v1 Shao. And so, you know, if it locks into CC, well, you can come in afterwards. And hey, when you allow mons that are similarly threatening in terms of how strong they are, especially Toxtricity, I mean, that's still bad for Shao. It's something. You can get back a little bit of momentum that way, because then you have the advantageous breaker. And Florges is a fairy type, like we said. Fairy is one of the better checks to Mienshao, just any type of fairy. They have to run P-Jab, and if they're not Poison Jab, then you will wall them pretty effectively. And bonus points, you hit them super effectively. And both of these are also kind of getting bonus points because Tera Poison's like very free on them. Big reason for it is because you want to check Croak better. And Poison also maintains your resistance to fight, which is pretty cool. So this lets you become very reliable at beating Shao. And it's not like Legion. Legion just means you have free pivots into Mienshao CC. So it's always good to get something like a Galarian Slowbro in on a CC from Shao, right? Or like a Vileplume. But when you can just outright blink it entirely with Pokemon like this, that's like extra good. Because again, it's all about getting momentum back, especially with Pokemon like basically the non-Decidueyes, because these run Scarf pretty frequently too. Shandy less so than the other two, but with these ones being Scarf, it means that you always threaten Shao the turn after, and that gives you the momentum back. It makes the next turn more favorable to you. So my Legion comes out now. You CC'd into it. All right, let's see. You think I'm crashing? You think I'm blit turning? You think I'm just double switching? Because maybe you have like a Vaporeon on your team, for example. Figure it out. Otherwise, I'm killing a stupid weasel, taking its soul. Yeah, maybe I got a Decidueye out. Am I Bandit Decidueye? You wanna pivot around that? My Specs Shandy? You wanna pivot around that? Am I Specs Typh? Of course, like Life Orb Shao does have ways around these slower breakers, of course, but part of the point is, one, you don't know if some of these are even not Scarf to begin with. And then two, I mean, if it's Scarf Shao, well, hey, it has no way around it. And the next turn, other than predicting you to double switch, and it's CCing again. And if they do that, you just call them the better player. So why do I have all these Pokemon here? What's the purpose? Well, these are all Pokemon that can run Tera types. And I thought that was a little easier to break off, because these are a little easier to see the natural matchup benefit into. These, I think you have to contextualize a whole lot more. So like something like Avalugg, for example. This mod is Tera Poison almost every game. Ghost is fine too. You could probably do fighting. But the point is it will Tera out of its fight weakness. And it is just a fine answer to Mienshao. You know, I mean, this mod has 184 base defense. I would hope it could check a Shao. Will it get you turned on forever? Yep. Will it die to a Toxtricity's Thundershock? Probably. But it wall Mienshao. Chinchino's cool because you got Tera Ghost. And he even runs Focus Sash sometimes, so like, you will just beat Shao 1v1. You potentially just goob it for free setup too. That could be bad. Flygon with Tera Ghost is pretty good too. Tera Ghost Flygon's a thing to begin with because of variants that let it beat Bronzong 1v1 with like Throat Chop. Shouts to ZS for that. And hey, beating Shao through that manner, potentially giving yourself a free DD as it CCs, that's also very good. Tera Ghost Incineroar, we've actually seen this increasingly lately because there's a lot of good fighting types in NU. and being able to just blank them out of nowhere, that's really valuable. Especially if it lets you get a free kill on something like a Shower or even a Berloom with Flare Blitz. Melodic, Tera Poison's really common on it because you just don't want to get poisoned, even with Marvel Scale. It just cuts in your longevity way too much. And in Milo with Tera Poison is not dying to a Mienshao anytime soon. Milo also having the added benefit of being able to maintain momentum itself. So it's a little bit easier for it, in my eyes at least, to not just become a sap versus Shao, like maybe something like Globro or Plume could be viewed. PZ is Tera Ghost almost every single game. That is, you do not want to CC into the Tera. Plus, I mean, hey, if you're Life Orb Shao, they could be Scarf PZ. So there's even that. You may just get got by that. Registeel, Tera Ghost is super common on it. It could T-Wave you if you CC into it too ambitiously, or even knock it ambitiously. Like, it won't die still. And if Mienshao gets paralyzed, it loses an insanely high amount of its threat level. Pert's Tera type is pretty much always Fairy or Poison or Ghost, like one of those few. Something to help versus fighters, just because it's so generically fat physically to begin with. And so that can, of course, help you out versus Shao. You will toast it with EQ. It's very nice. Torterra, hey, Tort kind of has a million Tera types. Ghost is one of them, though. I've done Tera Blast Ghost Tort before. It's very funny. Obviously, that's helpful into Shao, though, as well. Imagine, like, Shao tries to CC you as you set up. You Tera Ghost, you Shell Smash, and you get another Shell Smash. At that point, good night, Moon. Good night, Moon. And in Vaporeon last, Vapo also has the nice benefit of having Protect. So you can always Protect versus the Mienshao first turn. See what they're doing. If you already have Confirmation or Scarf, that's obviously extra beneficial, but maybe they're just Life Orb. And maybe you just waste a power point of theirs. That's cool. But also, Tera Poison Vaporeon is very good. And then you just check Shao. So, I mean, is Mienshao broken? I don't think it's broken. I think, in the traditional sense of the word, you cannot argue that it is too broken for the tier. Or not that it's not too broken. You can argue it is too much for the tier. But broken? No. Not at all. There's a lot of counterplay to Mienshao in the tier. I don't care how many hoops you want to jump through. This is all counterplay to the Pokemon. You can argue how good of counterplay it is, though, as I did as I went through it. And I believe that's where this is literally the least interesting thing I could say. This is where every single suspect test discussion leads. Is the counterplay enough? Do you feel like it's reliable enough? And, I mean, this is where I will argue that it's very much a matter of me if I need to play more with Life Orb Shao and feel how it is to actually use them on. How easy do I think it is to make this Mon go crazy? Because admittedly, when I face Life Orb Shao, I'm kind of like, eh. Good Mon, but I don't think it's some world beater. Maybe I'll feel differently if I'm the one using it. Maybe I feel like it's like, oh, I just get 12 kills every game. But I think there is plenty of counterplay to it in the tier. But obviously I see the argument as why this is not enough. Because Shao's versatility and how it's not something that's particularly easy to telegraph from preview or even early turns, unless, of course, they make it really obvious what they've got. I think that's probably the biggest reason why I would want to see a suspect test on it. Pretty much, yeah, I'm pro suspect test on Shao. At the very least, I believe... Here's how I view it, right? When we do the surveys, we go 1 to 5, and 3 is where I'm starting to say, like, okay, suspect test is fine. Usually I'm looking more like closer to a 3.5, but we'll say 3 is where I'm like not upset if a test happens. I'm at least a 3 with Shao because I see the argument for it, and I believe it's a good one. Shao is just stupidly gassed up offensively, or cracked out, I should say. It's cracked out offensively, and I believe that the coverage Regenerator making it so hard to actually get chip on compared to some other breakers that are like similarly or perhaps even just stronger than Shao. I think these types of things push it over the edge enough to where I'm like, okay, I at least would like to give the community a chance to see what happens. Now you may wonder, why is the tier leader saying all this? Well, contrary to popular belief, I can't just do what I want to do. This process is in place. Hope y'all enjoyed, though. Yeah, let me know your thoughts down below, Mienshao. You think it's too good? You think it's just another, like, great Pokemon in the tier? Do you think that Mienshao is actually the most overrated Pokemon ever and should be C rank? I don't know, man, but y'all have a great day. I'm gonna go get some sleep for work tomorrow. I'll catch y'all tomorrow. Peace.